The sweet taste of success. I never thought I'd be writing this post, but I need to share my story with people who might understand what it feels like to have your world turned upside down and somehow find your way back stronger than before. It's been exactly 2 years since everything happened, and I'm finally ready to talk about it. The betrayal. 3 years ago, I was living what I thought was my dream life. I was the co-owner of a rapidly growing boutique marketing agency in Chicago that specialized in helping small businesses develop their online presence. My business partner Jake had been my friend since college. We'd started with nothing but our laptops and a shared vision in my tiny apartment, and within 4 years we had 15 employees, a beautiful office downtown, and a client list that made our competitors jealous. I handled the creative side, content strategy, branding, social media campaigns, while Jake managed finances, client relations, and business development. We complemented each other perfectly, or so I thought. Our revenue had doubled every year and we were on track to hit 7 figures. I had recently bought my first condo, a modest but beautiful place with a view of Lake Michigan that made me feel like I'd finally made it. My personal life was just as promising. I had started dating Michael, a kind and thoughtful architect I'd met at a client's product launch. After 6 months together, we were talking about moving in together. My younger sister had just had her first baby, making me an aunt. I flew home to Boston at least once a month to see them. Life was good, until it suddenly wasn't. The first sign that something was wrong came when one of our biggest clients called me directly instead of going through our normal channels. Marissa owned a chain of upscale bakeries that had expanded from 1 location to 6 across the Midwest with our help. "Sarah, I've been trying to reach Jake about our contract renewal, but he keeps giving me the runaround," she said, sounding frustrated. "He mentioned something about significant rate increases that weren't in our original agreement. I wanted to talk to you directly before I make any decisions." This was news to me. We had always been transparent with our pricing, and any major changes were supposed to be discussed between Jake and me before approaching clients. I assured Marissa I'd look into it and get back to her. When I confronted Jake, he brushed it off as a miscommunication. Marissa misunderstood. "I just told her we might need to adjust some rates next year to account for expanded services. Nothing urgent." Something felt off, but I trusted Jake. We'd been friends for over a decade. We'd crashed on each other's couches during tough times. He'd been there for me when my dad died 3 years ago. I couldn't imagine he would deliberately keep me in the dark. A week later, our office manager, Tina, came to me with concerns about late payments to some of our freelancers. Again, Jake had an explanation: temporary cash flow issues due to some clients paying late. He showed me a spreadsheet of outstanding invoices that seemed to back up his story. "Don't worry about it," he said with his trademark confident smile. "I've got everything under control. You focus on the Davis pitch next week. We land them and we're set for the year." I threw myself into preparing for the Davis Corporation pitch, a potential client that could increase our annual revenue by 30%. The night before the presentation, I stayed late at the office, refining our slides and rehearsing my talking points. Around midnight, I realized I'd left my phone charger in Jake's office. His door was unlocked. As I unplugged my charger from the wall, I accidentally knocked over a stack of papers on his desk. While gathering them up, a bank statement caught my eye, but it wasn't for our business account. It was for something called Velocity Digital Holdings, with Jake listed as the sole account holder. My stomach dropped. I shouldn't have looked further, but something compelled me to keep reading. The statement showed regular transfers from our company account to this unknown entity, some as large as $30,000. The total over the past 6 months was nearly $300,000. I sat down, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. With shaking hands, I opened Jake's laptop. We knew each other's passwords, another sign of our supposedly unshakable trust. What I found in his email confirmed my worst fears. Jake had been systematically diverting our clients to a new company he had formed without my knowledge. He had separate contracts with our 5 biggest clients to transition them to Velocity Digital over the next 3 months. There was more. Jake had taken out a business loan in our company's name that I knew nothing about. He had been inflating our company expenses and pocketing the difference. And most devastating of all, I found emails to a business lawyer discussing options for buying out a troublesome partner, me. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that I couldn't process it all at once. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment or a misunderstanding. This was months, maybe years, of deliberate deception by someone I had trusted implicitly. I gathered as much evidence as I could, forwarding emails to myself, taking photos of documents with my phone. Then I went home and had the most horrific night of my life, cycling through shock, denial, rage, and despair. I didn't call anyone. I couldn't find the words to explain how my life had just imploded. The next morning I walked into our office early before anyone else arrived. I sat at my desk, staring at the business we had built together, the walls decorated with framed articles about our success and photos of our team celebrations. In one of them, Jake had his arm around my shoulders, both of us beaming with pride after winning our first industry award. When Jake arrived, he looked surprised to see me there so early. "Ready for the big pitch?" he asked cheerfully. I looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered how I had missed the signs. Had he always been this person and I'd been too blind to see it? Or had success changed him? It didn't matter now. "We need to talk," I said quietly. "Can it wait until after the Davis meeting? We should focus on—" "I know about Velocity Digital," I interrupted. "I know everything, Jake." His face changed in an instant. The friendly mask disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating that I'd never seen before. "What exactly do you think you know?" he asked, his voice low. I laid out everything I had discovered. With each point, his expression hardened. "You weren't supposed to find out this way," he finally said, not denying anything. "But since we're having this conversation now, yes, I'm starting my own agency. The industry is changing and I need to position myself differently. By stealing our clients? By embezzling money from our company? By taking out loans I don't know about?" My voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. He leaned back in his chair, suddenly relaxed, almost smug. "Let's be realistic, Sarah. You're the creative heart of this place and that's valuable. But I'm the business brain. I've carried you financially from the beginning. Half these clients would never have signed without my connections. I deserve more than a 50% share. So your solution was to destroy what we built instead of talking to me like an adult?" He shrugged. "Business is business. Nothing personal. Nothing personal. 3 years of friendship, 6 years of partnership, countless late nights and shared dreams, reduced to nothing personal. What happens now?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "I'll give you 2 options," he said as if he were being generous. "You can sell your share of the company to me. I'll offer a fair price considering the circumstances. Or we can dissolve the partnership, but you should know I've already secured agreements with our major clients to follow me." He was so confident, so sure that he had backed me into a corner. And from a purely practical perspective, he had. He controlled the finances. He had relationships with our biggest clients. He had been planning this for months while I had been blindsided. "I need time to think," I said. "Take the day," he replied magnanimously. "But I need your decision by tomorrow. The Davis pitch is at 2 p.m. by the way. I can handle it alone if you're not up to it." I walked out of the office in a daze. As soon as I was outside, I called Michael and asked if he could meet me for lunch. I needed to talk to someone who wasn't connected to my business life, someone who could give me perspective. Over salads at our favorite cafe, I poured out the whole sordid story. Michael listened without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This is theft and fraud," he said when I finished. "You need to go to the police." "And tell them what? That my business partner is stealing clients? That's not illegal, just unethical. The finances are more complicated. We both had access to the accounts. It would be my word against his." "Then talk to a lawyer at least," Michael urged. "Don't make any decisions until you understand your legal options." He was right, of course. I spent the afternoon in a lawyer's office, explaining my situation to Patricia, a sharp-eyed attorney specializing in business disputes. She took copious notes and asked pointed questions about our partnership agreement, financial arrangements, and the evidence I had gathered. "You have a stronger position than you might think," she said after reviewing everything. "But I won't sugarcoat this. You're in for a fight. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Jake's smug confidence, his certainty that I would crumble. Something hardened inside me. "Yes," I said. "I'm not walking away from what I built." What followed was the most challenging period of my life. Jake moved quickly, informing our employees about the restructuring of our company before I could speak to them myself. He presented it as an amicable split, with him starting a new venture that would better serve our clients' evolving needs. He invited each employee to join him, offering raises to those he wanted and conveniently forgetting about the rest. 8 of our 15 employees chose to follow Jake, including our head of client services and 2 senior project managers. The remaining 7 looked to me with uncertainty in their eyes, wondering if they had just backed the wrong horse. I called an emergency meeting with those who stayed. We gathered in our now half-empty conference room, the silence oppressive. "I know you all have questions," I began. "You're wondering if you made a mistake by not going with Jake. You're worried about your jobs, about the future of this company." I took a deep breath. "I can't promise that the next few months will be easy. But I can promise that we will rebuild, and we will do it with integrity." I outlined my immediate plan. We would focus on retaining our remaining clients by providing exceptional service. We would reach out to the clients Jake had taken to explain the situation honestly without badmouthing him. And we would aggressively pursue new business to replace what we had lost. "I'm staying," said Tina, our office manager, with quiet determination. "What Jake did was wrong. I want to be part of rebuilding." Others nodded in agreement. It wasn't blind loyalty. It was a choice to be part of something honest, even if the path forward was uncertain. The next few weeks were brutal. Jake had changed all the passwords to our financial accounts, forcing me to work with the bank to regain access. I discovered he had drained our business account of all but the minimum required to keep it open. Our credit line was maxed out. And as he had predicted, 4 of our 5 largest clients had already signed contracts with his new agency. My lawyer filed for an emergency injunction to freeze the disputed assets and prevent Jake from using our company's intellectual property or client list. The judge granted the injunction, but the damage was already done. Jake had planned meticulously, ensuring that he would have enough cash flow to weather any temporary legal obstacles. Meanwhile, I had a company to run with drastically reduced resources. I moved our operations to a co-working space to cut overhead costs. I took no salary for 3 months, living off my savings. I worked 18-hour days, handling client work myself to reduce staffing costs while simultaneously pitching new business. The stress took its toll. I lost weight. I barely slept. My relationship with Michael became strained as I canceled plans and brought work home every night. After a particularly difficult argument about my work-life balance, or lack thereof, we decided to take a break. "I care about you," he said, his voice gentle despite his frustration. "But I can't watch you destroy yourself over this." I couldn't blame him. I wasn't much of a partner at that point. I was a woman obsessed with survival, my own and my company's. The lowest point came about 2 months after the split. I had just lost a pitch for a client we desperately needed. On my way back to the office, I walked past an upscale restaurant and spotted Jake through the window. He was dining with 2 people I recognized as the executives from the Davis Corporation, the client we had been set to pitch together on the day everything fell apart. They were laughing, clinking champagne glasses. Jake looked relaxed, successful, untouched by the chaos he had created in my life. I stood on the sidewalk staring through the glass, feeling a surge of rage so intense it made me lightheaded. For a moment I considered walking in there and creating a scene. I wanted to tell those executives exactly who they were doing business with. I wanted to wipe that self-satisfied smile off Jake's face. Instead, I took a photo with my phone and walked away. That picture became my motivation, not out of a desire for revenge, but as a reminder that I refused to let Jake's version of success be the last word in our story. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by work files and takeout containers, and had a moment of brutal honesty with myself. The path I was on wasn't sustainable. I couldn't outmuscle Jake at his own game. He had too much of a head start and had shed any ethical constraints that might slow him down. I needed a different approach. I needed to play to my own strengths. The next morning I gathered my remaining team. "We're changing strategy," I announced. "From now on we're not just replacing what we lost. We're building something new." The pivot. Jake had positioned Velocity Digital as a full-service marketing agency, essentially duplicating our original business model but with him at the helm. Instead of trying to compete directly, I decided to specialize. Our agency would focus exclusively on social media marketing for women-owned businesses, a growing niche that Jake had always considered too limited. I had always been the creative force behind our social campaigns, and several of our most successful clients had been women entrepreneurs. By narrowing our focus, we could develop deeper expertise and build a reputation as specialists rather than generalists. I rebranded the company as Monarch Social, a nod to the monarch butterfly and its remarkable transformation. We redesigned our website, created case studies highlighting our work with women-owned businesses, and I started a weekly newsletter offering social media tips specifically tailored to this audience. The transition wasn't immediate or easy. We had to educate potential clients about why specialist knowledge was more valuable than general marketing services. I networked relentlessly, attending women in business events, offering free workshops, and building relationships within that community. Slowly things began to turn around. A bakery owner who had followed Jake to Velocity became frustrated with their cookie-cutter approach and returned to us. She referred us to 2 other women entrepreneurs in her network. A lifestyle blogger turned business coach hired us to manage her social media launch and was so impressed with the results that she featured us in her online course. 6 months after the split, we had replaced most of our lost revenue and had carved out a distinct identity in the market. We moved into a small but stylish office space that better reflected our new brand. I was able to give modest raises to the team members who had stuck with me through the worst times. I was so focused on rebuilding the business that I barely kept track of what Jake was doing. I had muted him on social media and asked mutual friends not to bring him up in conversation. I knew from industry chatter that Velocity Digital was doing well. Jake had always been good at making a splash and courting big clients. Then one day, Tina forwarded me an email from a former client who had moved to Velocity. It contained a presentation Jake had created for a major pitch, and embedded in it were design elements and copy that had been created by our team before the split. He had changed the colors and fonts, but the core concepts were unmistakably our work. My first instinct was to call my lawyer. This was a clear violation of the injunction. But as I reviewed the material more carefully, I saw an opportunity for a different kind of response. Instead of pursuing legal action that would drain more of my limited resources and energy, I decided to use this as content for my newsletter. Without naming Jake or his agency, I wrote an article titled, "When Imitation Isn't Flattery, Protecting Your Creative Work." I used side-by-side comparisons of anonymized examples showing how our original work had been repurposed. I included practical advice for small business owners on copyright protection and how to respond when your creative work is appropriated. The article struck a chord. It was shared widely across social media, particularly in women's entrepreneurial circles where issues of creative theft and undervaluation were common concerns. Several marketing industry blogs picked it up, praising the constructive approach to a frustrating problem. One of those shares caught the attention of Eliza Chin, the founder of a rapidly growing women's athletic wear brand. She reached out directly, saying she appreciated our perspective on creative integrity and wanted to discuss working together on her social media strategy. Eliza became our biggest client to date. Her brand had a passionate following of women who valued authenticity and empowerment, values that aligned perfectly with Monarch's new identity. Our collaboration received substantial coverage in marketing publications and business media focused on women entrepreneurs. The Eliza Chin partnership marked a turning point. Suddenly, Monarch Social wasn't just surviving, we were thriving. We had a waitlist of potential clients. I hired 5 new team members, including a brilliant social media strategist who had become disillusioned with the corporate approach at her previous agency, which happened to be Velocity Digital, though I didn't know that when I hired her. As our reputation grew, I started receiving speaking invitations. At first, I was reluctant. Public speaking had always been Jake's domain in our former partnership. But I pushed myself outside my comfort zone, sharing insights about social media strategies for women-owned businesses at industry conferences and entrepreneurial events. After one such talk in New York, a publisher approached me about writing a book on social media marketing for women entrepreneurs. The advance wasn't huge, but the opportunity to establish myself as a thought leader in this space was invaluable. I dedicated weekends and early mornings to writing, drawing on case studies from our work and the unique perspectives I'd gained through focusing on this niche. The process was therapeutic in a way I hadn't expected. It helped me articulate the values and approach that differentiated Monarch from agencies like Velocity. 9 months after my split with Jake, Social Monarchy: How Women Entrepreneurs Can Rule Their Digital Kingdom was published. The book received positive reviews and became required reading in several university marketing courses. More importantly, it positioned Monarch Social as the definitive expert in our specialized field. Around this time, Michael reached out. We hadn't spoken in months, but he had seen an article about my book in Chicago Business Journal. We met for coffee, and the connection between us was still there despite everything that had happened. "I always knew you would land on your feet," he said. "But this is something else. You've completely transformed." We began dating again, more slowly this time, with better boundaries around work and personal time. Having weathered the crisis, I had a new perspective on what mattered and how to balance ambition with other aspects of life. The reckoning. It was nearly a year after Jake's betrayal when the first cracks in his facade began to show. A junior designer who had followed him to Velocity reached out to Tina about potential opportunities at Monarch. Over lunch, she shared that all was not well at Jake's agency. "He's burning through clients," she explained. "They come in excited by his big promises, but leave after 6 months when the results don't match the pitch. And he's charging premium rates while cutting corners on execution." I took this information with a grain of salt. Disgruntled employees often have biased perspectives. But over the next few weeks, similar reports trickled in from other sources in our industry. Jake had developed a reputation for over-promising and under-delivering. He was still landing big clients thanks to his charisma and connections, but he wasn't keeping them. Meanwhile, Monarch was developing the opposite reputation. We were selective about the clients we took on, ensuring each was a good fit for our specialized approach. We set realistic expectations and consistently exceeded them. Our client retention rate was over 90%, unheard of in an industry known for constant churn. I was no longer obsessively tracking Jake's movements, but news of his biggest misstep reached me through industry channels. Velocity had secured a major contract with a national restaurant chain, one of the largest accounts in the Chicago market. Jake had promised an innovative social campaign that would revolutionize their online presence. The campaign launched with considerable fanfare. Jake had always been good at creating buzz. But within days, it became clear that something had gone terribly wrong. The core concept of the campaign unintentionally mirrored a recent controversy involving the restaurant industry and labor practices. The hashtag they had created was hijacked by critics, turning into a platform for complaints about the chain and the industry at large. Instead of acknowledging the misstep and pivoting quickly, Jake doubled down. He blamed the client for approving the concept and the public for misinterpreting the campaign's intent. The restaurant chain publicly fired Velocity Digital, citing creative differences and professional concerns. The fallout was swift. Other Velocity clients began to question their relationships with the agency. Industry publications ran articles analyzing the failed campaign, with marketing experts, including me, though I kept my comments professionally neutral, weighing in on where they had gone wrong. Jake's response was to blame his creative team, firing his head of content and 2 senior designers. This only worsened Velocity's reputation within the industry. Good creative talent became reluctant to work there, creating a downward spiral of diminishing quality and increasing client dissatisfaction. I didn't take any pleasure in watching this unfold. Well, maybe a little. But mostly I was focused on Monarch's continued growth. We had expanded to 20 employees and moved to a larger office space. My book had led to a regular column in a major business publication. We had launched a membership community for women entrepreneurs to share social media strategies and support each other's businesses. One evening, I received an unexpected email from Marissa, the bakery chain owner whose call had first alerted me to Jake's deception. "I need to talk to you about something important," she wrote. "Are you free for coffee tomorrow?" We met at one of her bakeries, now expanded to 9 locations across 3 states. After catching up on her business growth and Monarch's evolution, she got to the point. "Jake approached me last week about investing in Velocity," she said. "They're having cash flow problems and he's looking for a capital infusion. He pitched it as an opportunity to get in on the ground floor of their expansion. I kept my expression neutral. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Before I made any decision, I wanted to hear your side of what happened between you two. There were rumors, but I never knew the full story. I had never publicly discussed the details of Jake's betrayal. I had focused on building Monarch rather than tearing down Velocity. But Marissa had been there from the beginning, and she was potentially about to make a significant financial mistake. I told her everything: the embezzlement, the secret company, the diverted clients, the loans taken out in our company's name. I showed her copies of the evidence I had gathered that night in Jake's office. Marissa listened in shocked silence. When I finished, she shook her head. I had no idea it was that bad. I knew something wasn't right when he suddenly announced the new agency, but this is beyond unprofessional. It's criminal. I agreed. But pursuing criminal charges would have drained me of the time and energy I needed to rebuild. I made a calculated decision to focus on moving forward. Well, I won't be investing in Velocity, she said firmly. And I think some other people should know about this before they make the same mistake. I'm not asking you to spread this story, I cautioned. I've moved past it. I understand, she said. But I'm on the board of the Chicago Entrepreneurs Association. Jake has been courting several members as potential investors. They deserve to know who they're dealing with. I couldn't control what Marissa did with the information I had shared, nor did I try to. My focus remained on Monarch's growth and the community we were building. But over the next few weeks, I noticed Jake's name being removed from speaking panels at upcoming industry events. Velocity's social media accounts went quiet. Their weekly newsletter stopped arriving. Then came the industry email that everyone read but no one publicly acknowledged. Velocity Digital was being acquired by a larger agency for what insiders knew was a fraction of its theoretical value. Jake would not be joining the new organization in any capacity. The announcement cited irreconcilable strategic differences, corporate speak for, we want the client list but not the founder. 2 days later, I received a text from a number I had deleted but still recognized. Jake. Can we meet? I think it's time we talked. I considered ignoring it. There was nothing Jake could say that would undo the damage he had caused or change the course our lives had taken. But curiosity got the better of me. And perhaps some small part of me wanted closure. We met at a neutral location. A coffee shop in a neighborhood neither of us frequented. Jake looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. The easy charm that had once been his defining characteristic was noticeably absent. Thank you for meeting me, he said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I wasn't sure you would. What do you want, Jake? I asked, not unkindly but without warmth. I wanted to. He paused, seemingly struggling to find the right words. I guess I wanted to explain myself. I'm not sure that's possible, I replied. But go ahead. What followed was a rambling justification that revealed more about Jake than he perhaps intended. He talked about feeling trapped in our partnership, believing he could achieve more on his own. He complained about the pressure of appearing successful to his family and friends. He claimed he had intended to offer me a fair settlement eventually. I never meant for things to get so out of hand, he said, sounding almost sincere. I just saw an opportunity and I took it. Isn't that what entrepreneurs do? Entrepreneurs build things, I corrected him. They don't destroy what others have built. He didn't have a response to that. Why are you really here, Jake? I asked after an uncomfortable silence. It's been over a year. Why now? He looked down at his untouched coffee. You've probably heard about Velocity. I heard there was an acquisition. A fire sale is more like it, he said bitterly. The investors backed out at the last minute. Everyone started calling in their loans. I had no choice but to sell for whatever I could get. I waited, sensing there was more. The thing is, he continued, not meeting my eyes, I'm having trouble finding a new position. Seems like no one in Chicago wants to work with me. He glanced up. I think you might have something to do with that. I almost laughed. I've never spoken publicly about what happened between us. I've been too busy building my own business to worry about yours. Then why is everyone shutting me out? He demanded, a flash of the old Jake breaking through, the one who always found someone else to blame for his failures. Maybe because good reputations are built on consistent actions over time, not on charm and quick wins, I suggested. You cut corners. You prioritized appearances over substance. The market eventually figures that out. He was silent for a moment, processing this. I need your help, he finally said. A statement from you supporting me, saying our split was amicable. Something to help me salvage my reputation. And there it was, the real reason for this meeting. Not to apologize, not to make amends, but to ask for my help in rewriting history. No, I said simply. Sarah, be reasonable. We were friends once. Good friends. His voice took on a pleading quality I had never heard before. I made a mistake. A big one. But does that mean my career should be over? I considered my response carefully. Your career isn't over because of what you did to me, Jake. It's in trouble because of the choices you've continued to make since then. The way you've treated clients, employees, and partners. I didn't create that pattern. You did. So you won't help me. His expression hardened. I won't lie for you, I clarified. That's different from not helping you. What's that supposed to mean? It means that the best thing you could do right now is take responsibility for your actions. All of them. Stop looking for someone to blame or someone to rescue you. Rebuild your reputation the hard way, by being trustworthy even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult. He scoffed. Easy for you to say from your position. You landed on your feet. Not everyone is so lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it, I said, gathering my things to leave. I worked harder than I ever had in my life. I was honest even when it hurt. I built genuine relationships instead of using people. That's not luck, Jake. Those are choices. I stood up. I truly hope you find your way forward. But I can't help you take shortcuts again. As I walked away, I felt a weight lifting, the last remnants of anger and resentment that I hadn't even realized I was still carrying. Jake had taken so much from me, but in forcing me to rebuild, he had inadvertently given me something valuable. The knowledge of my own resilience and the opportunity to create something that was truly mine. The aftermath. 2 years have passed since everything happened, and Monarch Social has become more successful than our original agency ever was. We now have offices in Chicago and New York with 35 employees between them. Our client list includes some of the most successful women-owned businesses in the country. The membership community we created has over 5,000 active participants. My book is now in its second edition, with an accompanying online course that has become a significant revenue stream. I speak at conferences across the country about social media strategy, women in business, and occasionally resilience in the face of professional setbacks. On a personal level, Michael and I got married last year in a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. My sister and her now toddler flew in from Boston. Tina was my maid of honor. Our professional relationship having evolved into a deep friendship through the crucible of rebuilding Monarch together. As for Jake, I hear he moved to the West Coast to restart his career away from the shadow of Velocity's collapse. I genuinely hope he's found a better path. The experience changed me, but I have to believe it changed him too. The betrayal that once defined my life is now just a chapter in a much longer story. One that I continue to write on my own terms. The company I built from the ashes of that betrayal is stronger, more authentic, and more aligned with my values than anything Jake and I created together ever was. Sometimes I think about that night in the office when I discovered what Jake had done. In the moment, it felt like my world was ending. I couldn't see past the pain and shock to imagine that anything good could come from such complete betrayal. If I could go back in time and speak to myself in that moment, I would say this. Trust yourself more than you trust anyone else. Your instincts are sharper than you know. Your resilience runs deeper than you can imagine. And your vision for what's possible is far greater than what anyone else might try to limit you to. The path forward isn't always clear and it's rarely easy. But it's yours to define. And sometimes, the greatest opportunities emerge from our darkest moments. Not because of them, but despite them, through them, beyond them. When someone tries to write you out of your own story, pick up the pen and write yourself an even better one. Think.